And welcome to the webinar today on developing teams and management practices for clinical trials incorporating EDI. My name is Manaza Jamil, and I'm going to be presenting this webinar. We have a couple of learning objectives today to understand the significance of diversity, equity, and inclusion in clinical trial teams, learn effective strategies for fostering a culture of inclusion within clinical trial teams, and then to gain practical knowledge on how to implement EDI principles when managing teams. Why is EDI in clinical trials important? So just to set the foundation a little bit for today's conversation, EDI in trials helps address health disparities by including underrepresented groups who are often affected by unique health issues. Diverse participant representation ensures that findings are applicable to broader populations and thus improves the external validity of research outcomes. An inclusive environment also encourages open feedback and participation, which reduces dropouts and improves adherence to protocols. And transparent communication about trial purpose, risks, and benefits in culturally sensitive ways enhances the ethical foundation of the research process. By including diverse perspectives in clinical trial teams, research designs are more comprehensive and they better address health needs across different populations. Diverse teams are also better equipped to communicate effectively with participants from varied backgrounds, which fosters trust and transparency. So how do we embed EDI in clinical trial teams? So first and foremost, we want to emphasize the importance of education and training for everybody on the team, including leadership, on EDI and what EDI is. One thing to remember that's really important is that this is an ongoing journey. This is a process of learning that is continuous. It is not a one and done type of tick box, nor should it be thought of as such, where once you've completed the training, you just have, a certificate that you print out and you file it away, and there you go. And that means that you are fully trained and competent in EDI. So that's not how it is. We want that there should be ongoing EDI training, different types. There's unconscious bias training, cultural competence workshops, and all of these will help both managers and team members develop the skills that they need to foster a more inclusive work environment. And then alongside this training, we also want to find ways to assess and evaluate the team in terms of their uptake and how they are practically implementing the knowledge that they're learning through the training. Just to plug in over here, N2 Canada has launched the first course of its kind in Canada, which is specifically designed for clinical research professionals. It is called Cultural Competency Skills in Clinical Research, and it's available at no cost to all N2 members. It makes it an accessible resource for institutions who conduct clinical research and are aiming to build culturally competent teams. I feel like it is a must have, in terms of today's day and age and the diversity that we interact with on a day-to-day basis. These skills are an absolute must. And I do believe that this course will help a lot of people gain those essential skills and strategies that they need to effectively interact with participants from different cultural backgrounds. So going back to how do we embed EDI in clinical trial teams? So alongside the training, the next step is that you do need to have an EDI plan. And this should really be customized to your team and department because everybody works alongside diverse individuals. And so although your institution or organization might have an EDI strategy, and most do, you want to customize it. You want to really hone in on the unique needs and assets that you have within your department or team, and then really hone in on what kinds of objectives you'd like to set forth for your team members. And this also ensures that diversity and inclusion efforts are prioritized and they're measured just like any other objective. So we want to set up clear EDI goals and track the progress and then report on outcomes. This should not be something that's just there as a token, but it should genuinely be embedded within the workflow and work plan of your team. The strategy, for example, oftentimes people will ask me, what kinds of EDI goals should we set? Or what kind of EDI strategies should we have for our team? So it should really cover the entire roster, the entire spectrum of tasks, beginning from recruitment, onboarding, employee upskilling, professional development, retention of team members, and then the ongoing internal culture. So, for example, I'll give you an example. Many times I've heard from individuals, and I myself have witnessed when you're interviewing for different roles, and the hiring panel that you are sitting across from is sometimes talking in very strong terms about how they value diversity and are committed to inclusivity and equity, etc., and how they really value diverse perspectives. But then if you don't have that diversity reflected in even the hiring panel, which is two or three individuals who are interviewing you, then that really goes a long way towards really walking the walk. So we want to be careful and mindful of all of these different steps. And by making EDI a core part of your team's mission, you'll create a culture that values diversity at every level. So we have to start thinking about EDI in a different way, and it's not an abstract concept anymore. It should really be, it should be embedded in your team with measurable outcomes and deliverables, etc. Just like, we embed quality assurance in our teams and our work ethic, and then we measure that. This is also something that can be measured just like any other objective. A lot of teams, a lot of departments, institutions will have EDI leads or EDI champions, and that's an amazing idea. That's great. It also gives an opportunity to individuals who have an interest and skill in this area to get a leadership role and to get to exercise some leadership skills. So it is a great idea, and I'm very supportive of it. But remember that all of the responsibility does not then fall on the champion. It is a team effort, and we need buy-in from everybody in order for it to actually work. So the third step, I referred to this a little bit in the earlier slide. We want to build an exclusive recruitment process. So a diverse workforce begins with an inclusive recruitment process. We want to make sure that even the job descriptions that we're putting out there are they have inclusive terms and inclusive language, and ensuring that they appeal to a broad range of candidates. So we want to really think about making it more succinct. I think the more concise, the better. There's a lot of unnecessary qualifications sometimes that we put in that are kind of like nice to haves, but they're not incredibly essential to the job. So we want to really just sort of, go and filter in our job descriptions, making sure that we're reducing bias in any way. And some institutions have already adopted blind recruitment practices so that they can target unconscious bias amongst the hiring managers and hiring panels. Like I said before, make sure that your hiring panels reflect the diversity that you want to see in your team and organization. I already gave an example of my own interview there. And an inclusive recruitment process really does increase the likelihood of attracting good talent from various backgrounds, and that does go towards creating a richer and more dynamic workforce. And then you really want to focus on your internal culture and foster a culture of belonging. So inclusion is not just about numbers. It's not about how many people you've hired from diverse backgrounds. It's about creating a culture where all of those diverse individuals with their unique perspectives feel that they belong. And that is something that is a little bit difficult to achieve. It doesn't happen automatically. It does take some work, but I have seen a lot of clinical trial teams that are working very well together and do embed EDI principles and have hired individuals from various backgrounds, and all of them feel like they belong and feel included. Um, Employees do need to feel respected, valued, and free to bring their authentic selves to work. And I think a lot of people do struggle with that. So it's really important for the teams as a whole and leadership specifically to ensure that they are that they do open those doors for transparent and honest communication. So the third bullet point then leads into that. You can foster the sense of belonging by encouraging open communication, recognizing individual contributions, and celebrating perspectives that are diverse, creating opportunities for team bonding where people can talk and learn from each other, inclusive social events, and cross departmental collaborations can also strengthen this culture. Effective communication. We talked about this a little bit a minute ago. What does that mean and what does that entail? So, first and foremost, respect. So, we want individuals to share their cultural norms, their values, their beliefs with their team members, with their colleagues, so that they can better understand and respect your background. So, knowledge is power, right? So, the more knowledge that you can give to people in your team about who you are, where you come from, and what your beliefs and values are, the better your team will understand you and the better that communication will become. And you should advocate for your rights and expect dignity in all interactions. That is a very reasonable expectation to have. Clarity. Don't hesitate to ask questions if something is unclear. I think that goes for everybody anyway, not even just only in this context, but it's important to feel confident, and that only comes with knowledge and understanding. Sometimes we know individuals who have limited English proficiency, or perhaps English is not their first language, and they struggle a little bit. They need a little bit more time to understand what is being asked or requested or discussed. Um, we don't want we do want to give them that time to ask for clarity so that they can be empowered with knowledge and understanding and be as productive as possible. Openness goes back to the first bullet point. Be open about your experiences and perspectives. Sharing insights, lived experiences, your unique journey really does help people around you gain a better understanding of who you are. And it also ensures that your voice influences the work that you're doing. Techniques. How do we get to this clear, respectful, and empathetic interaction? These are the same principles that would apply in other circumstances as well. So it's nothing new or unique, but it does apply here. So I wanted to call it out. Active listening, so paying close attention to what people are saying without interrupting and then reflecting back what you've heard to ensure that you've heard everything correctly and understand it correctly. Asking open-ended questions. So questions that invite detailed responses rather than just a yes or no, because that encourages the person to share more about their perspectives, and that adds to your understanding. Cultural sensitivity. So learning about and respecting cultural differences. Some cultures have specific practices of or beliefs around health, around illness and disease, and around medicine. And the more aware you are of these preferences and values and beliefs, the more it can help you communicate effectively. And then also the other thing is that if you don't ask, if you don't seek the knowledge about different cultures and perspectives, you'll never know about it. So unless you know, you can't respect something that you don't know, right? So it's important to ask those questions and not be hesitant. Don't make assumptions about an individual. Ask them, learn directly from them. Language assumptions. So, for example, I don't know why, but to this day, when I go to a clinic or I'm sitting somewhere in a waiting area, when people approach me, their first assumption about me, just the way that I look, perhaps based on my appearance, is that I would not be speaking English. And so the way that they approach me and then the way they present themselves is often times, it's very clear that they've made that assumption that I don't speak English or I will not be understanding them very well. So I oftentimes get people who are speaking like a little bit louder than normal or a little bit more slowly than normal, which is, it's okay, but it is an assumption that people make, and so we want to be very mindful about that. What is inclusive language? So we talked a little bit about ensuring that our job descriptions have inclusive language, that our team members use inclusive language on a day-to-day basis. So this is language that acknowledges diversity, conveys respect, is sensitive to differences, and promotes equal opportunities. And that's a large, um, that's a large order, right? So that's quite heavy, and it might be difficult for an individual to kind of go through all of this and say, I don't even know where I stand. I don't know how to measure my success in using inclusive language. But I think that it comes with practice, it comes with knowledge. So the first thing is to learn as much as possible about what inclusive language is. This is basically using those words, phrases, and expressions deliberately that avoid excluding, marginalizing, or insulting people, especially people from underrepresented or disadvantaged groups. So we want to make sure that a lot of the colloquialisms that we use um, are not insulting to others. Also, there might be some metaphors that we use on a day-to-day basis in general conversation that's not necessarily insulting or marginalizing, but it kind of excludes others because they may not understand the cultural context of where it comes from. So I've often heard people say, hit it out of the park and let the cat out of the bag, water under the bridge, willing to die on that hill. These are phrases that I've heard, and a couple of them I actually never understood in the beginning until somebody explained it to me. So for somebody who's not as familiar with English or English is not their first language, they may not understand these metaphors, and that might make them feel like a bit excluded. It's also up to them to ask the question and say, ask for clarity, but it's also up to us to make sure that each individual is very mindful of the language that they're using. We also want to make sure by using inclusive language that everybody feels acknowledged. And we want to aim for terms that are neutral, that are empowering and rooted in respect. So it's basically just being mindful about how words impact other people. And this is really, really important. It's very important because this is language is how we communicate every day. And it can have a very heavy impact on individuals. So for managers and leaders of clinical trial teams, fostering a culture of inclusion might be a tall order, might be difficult. But there are certain things that I thought that I come across when I talk with clinical trial teams that are just sort of very common. And so I thought I'd just share some of those bullet points with you, and acknowledging, of course, that there's a much wider scope for team managers here. So conflict resolution, as in any team, of course, there's some healthy approaches to resolving conflict. We want to encourage team members to listen actively and acknowledge each other's perspectives. You may want to consider involving a neutral third party to facilitate a resolution. And then the ongoing education and training is something I cannot emphasize enough. Um, Regular workshops, regular conversations, webinars, seminars on different types of trainings, including unconscious bias, to help team members understand how their perspectives might differ from others and also ensure how conflicts are resolved fairly. Decision making that centers diverse perspectives. So we want to engage a broad set of voices in our decision making processes, especially from those who come from underrepresented groups to ensure that their diverse perspectives are considered. And we want to rotate team members, encourage different team members to lead discussions or to lead decision-making processes to ensure that everyone has that opportunity to have a voice in shaping your team's progress and work. So I talked at the very beginning about how we want to not just roll out this training for team members, but we also want to make sure that that we have ways to assess and evaluate their progress. So there are some established tools and frameworks to evaluate cultural competency levels of research teams, and there's one that I've given a screenshot here on the slide. There's also anonymous surveys that you can create yourself and tailor them to your team. And then, of course, there should be some feedback loops that can be given ad hoc or during performance reviews. I wanted to share now some vignettes that I have, witnessed. And these are really telling, and I think that they hopefully will have an impact on you as you listen to them and as you read them, and hopefully they will help shape, some perspectives that you didn't have before. So, when a white colleague wears jeans and a hoodie, it's often seen as a sign of being relaxed and comfortable. But when I, as a Black person, wear the same attire and let my hair down, I've been told that my appearance was unprofessional for work. During a celebratory lunch with my team ahead of my maternity leave, some of my colleagues during this lunch ordered alcohol. My manager discreetly reminded them that as a Muslim, I don't drink and I might find it uncomfortable. While I appreciated the effort to be considerate, it really did leave me feeling a bit embarrassed. During my performance review, my manager highlighted that I seemed less engaged in meetings. I explained that I often need extra time to process and respond because English is not my first language. Despite my explanation, my communication skills were rated lower, even though I consistently delivered high quality work and met all deadlines. So now I wanted to take you through a couple of scenarios. During her performance review, Priya, a South Asian employee, expressed frustration about challenges she faced in meeting certain performance goals. She explained that some struggles stemmed from feeling unsupported in navigating workplace dynamics. In response, Priya's manager said, I treat everyone the same. While the manager, of course, intended to convey fairness, Priya felt unseen and misunderstood because the comment suggested to her that everyone was given identical treatment. And this really ignored Priya's need for specific support to thrive in the workplace. This left her feeling dismissed as it overlooked how systemic barriers or inequities might have contributed to her challenges. So, discussion questions. What's the difference between treating everybody the same, which is equality, and providing tailored support based on individual needs, which is equity? And how might focusing solely on equality hinder inclusivity in the workplace? So, of course, we know that equality emphasizes uniform treatment. Everyone gets the same level of support regardless of their starting point or their needs. Equity, on the other hand, of course, involves recognizing individual differences and providing support based on those differences to ensure fair outcomes. And so I want you to think about how team leaders and managers can recognize and support unique challenges that are faced by employees from diverse backgrounds without minimizing their experience. And in this scenario, what strategies could the manager have used to better understand and address Priya's concerns? Second scenario, one of your colleagues on your clinical trial team who is highly knowledgeable in their field has not been given opportunities to present at meetings, and it's also not involved in the frontline patient interactive tasks for their clinical trials, such as recruitment and consenting. Other team members have voiced difficulty understanding this person's accent, and as a result, the team leader has decided to have someone else present their ideas in group settings and not have them approach and interact with patients and families as well. So, what would you do in this situation to ensure that this team member feels valued and has an equal opportunity to share their expertise with their group? And what steps could be taken by the team leader to give this person a fair opportunity to present and interact with patients, even if their accent is difficult to understand and their communication style is different? So this is something that came out of a real life experience that I had with somebody on a team. And the resolution that the team leader had come to, which I thought was very fair, was that this person would be given first opportunities within the team. So team meetings and weekly check-ins and things like that. They would be given opportunities to present so that they would start to feel a little bit more comfortable with presentation and not really feel that their accent was keeping them back or was a hindrance in any way. And it also helped the colleagues get more used to their accent and their communication style. And so when you become used to it, you find less difficulty in understanding it. And so they did that for a couple of months and helped build the confidence in this team member. And then also slowly but surely gave them more and more opportunities to present externally, as well as to interact with patients and families as well. And so this I thought was very fair. And instead of just making a decision and saying that it's not going to be possible for you to speak, publicly, because it's difficult to understand, it's a more equitable outcome. I just wanted to close with some common myths that I come across in my conversations on a daily basis with different individuals and teams. So, myth number one, a single training can achieve competence in EDI. Absolutely not true. I said at the outset, it is a continuous learning process. It's not just a one and done tick box that you do and you print out your certificate and you file it away and you can prove that all of your team members are now competent. It is a journey and one that requires a lot of effort as well. EDI only involves racial and ethnic minorities. Absolutely not. EDI involves so much more than that. There are many other equity denied groups, those with disability, gender diverse individuals, etc. People of color are going to be experts in EDI. Absolutely not true. They may not have an interest in advancing EDI. They may also themselves, harbor unconscious bias and have stereotypical images in their mind about other people. So they're not, an expert just because they're people of color. Responsibility for advancing EDI lies with designated diversity staff. So this is what I meant earlier when I said that it's really great if you do identify an EDI champion or an EDI lead for your team, but it is an organizational commitment, just like anything else. Everyone has to do their part in order to truly foster that culture of inclusion and belonging. And then the last thing is what I hear all the time is that this is just too vast. It is too vast to address. While it's true that it's not black and white, it is something that's a little bit more nuanced and layered, but let's take it one step at a time. And the first thing is really just to learn and understand what it is, what are the principles. And then the next step in my mind would be to focus on communication skills. And once you do that, once you are more mindful of the language that you're using on a day-to-day basis, and striving to be as inclusive as possible in your conversations, that can go a long way to improve your competency in this area. And that's really all for today. If anybody had any questions or wanted to reach out, this is my email address. And I thank you very much for your time.